What's up guys, welcome back to Dead Malls, your one home for the most informative and musically pleasing dead and dying mall tours here on the web. In today's episode, after seeing a handful of dead malls throughout Texas, I headed back home, traveling north and stopping through the small town of Muskogee, Oklahoma, to check out and document their extremely underrated and fairly unheard of Arrowhead Mall. A mall that, as you could probably tell by the intro, has sort of just been this super dead whisper of retail past, stuck in limbo on one side of downtown Muskogee. Now I had little idea of what to expect, but what you'll see in this video, and what I'm going to try to recreate for you, was the very surreal experience of walking around inside of this 80s shopping mall that had literally nothing and nobody left inside of it. But before we get into it, I'd like to take a moment and shout out our winner, who was able to successfully guess the next mall. Very nice job, Dead Mallation. If you'd like to have your chance of being shouted out in the next episode, stick around for the next challenge. Anyways, let's dive in here, tell the rather interesting story of Arrowhead Mall, and see how this forgotten shopping destination was doing as of my visit back in August of 2023. The aforementioned anchors on the mall's sign, and even the very sad listing of remaining stores at the bottom, have all been gone, some of them for over 6 years. Yet Arrowhead still rocks them, and in glimmering MLA format. And now for your viewing pleasure, I give you all Arrowhead Mall. If you're a fan of liminal spaces, you're really going to like this place. Almost every turn I took led to some weird liminal view. But I'll shut up and let you all enjoy some of the late 80s sights, sounds, and aesthetics of this beautiful mall. By the latter half of the 1970s, the small city of Muskogee, Oklahoma, with a population of 38,000, was experiencing an economic downturn. Businesses that once populated the central business district were moving to the suburbs, or leaving town entirely. Newer shopping malls in the cities of Fort Smith and nearby Tulsa, like Central Mall, Woodland Mall, and Eastgate Mall, were all stealing away Muskogean shoppers. City officials had been looking for developers to help reinvent the dying downtown, and in 1980, they would finally find their answer, as Ed Warmack of the Arkansas-based Warmack & Company first proposed a new regional mall, right for the heart of downtown Muskogee, a new mall which would hopefully put Muskogee's retail scene back on the map. Now it's just my guess, but it looks like they were setting up a temporary Spirit Halloween inside of this old stage store, which is why you see all of those temporary walls and boxes back there. I'd just love to know though, if when Spirit Halloween is actually open in this mall, if it brings any actual life or people back to these halls. I'd love to know. In total, the mall project would cost over $50 million to fully complete, with Ed and his company throwing down $30 million and the rest of the $20 million coming from Muskogee urban redevelopment grants. The site of the mall would be chosen to lie between the blocks of West MLK and Denison Street, with its large layout set to sprawl from North Main to North 6th Street. Pre-Arrowhead Mall, the site was home to dozens of homes, industrial warehouses, factories, and even a rail yard. Believe it or not, but before this giant concrete jungle was plopped down on top of Muskogee, the area just north of downtown was a vibrant community, which would all be torn up throughout the mid-80s and turned into parking lots along with the mall's superstructure, all in the name of progress. Aside from one other mall walker and an amount of people in the food court that I could literally count on one hand, the mall was completely empty, dead silent, and beyond surreal to walk through. Between some of these songs, I might bleed in some of the mall's natural, dead silent ambiance. I'm not gonna lie, there's not much to listen to aside from my footsteps, but I want to let you all get a feel for this place and just how bizarre it was. Before we open the mall in our history, we're going to begin our trek towards the food court, seeing few of the mall's lost-to-destination brands like Bath & Body Works, Regis, and even a retro Foot Locker. As for this colorful tiled storefront to the right of me, I'm not sure. Does anybody know what that once was? before the mall would officially open its doors, Warmac would allow shoppers to walk through it in its construction phase, allowing them to see the future stores coming to the mall and just what Muskogee's new shopping center had in store for them. Finally, in early September 1987, Arrowhead Mall would hold its official grand opening after nearly 8 years of planning and construction. I'm unable to find any archive data on newspapers.com about an actual date, but the closest I could pull was an early September opening. And just like they had planned, the new Arrowhead Mall would bring shoppers back to Muskogee, with the new mall becoming a magnet for retail for all of eastern Oklahoma. Within its halls, which by the way haven't changed a bit since opening, shoppers found anchor stores Sears, JCPenney, Dillard's, and a smaller fourth anchor called Beale Ladyman, with smaller stores including a lot of what you can still see scarred today. Foot Locker, Sam Goody, KB Toys, Great American Cookie, Walden Books, Zales, and Claire's, among others. Aesthetically, Arrowhead was a breath of fresh air, an escape for locals who didn't want to have to drive the 50+ miles to the next best thing. Simple ramps, brick planters, and trees dotted down the corridors, with a bridged fountain tying it all together in the center court. In the mall's food court, a giant Teflon-coated tent skylight lit it up daily with bounds of natural light. And through a slow first few years, Arrowhead Mall found its footing, gaining more stores, and eventually even a movie theater. One of the little details that I found so fascinating about this place is the ceiling, because not only do we have skylights which follow us throughout the mall, but we also have that curved drop ceiling with the diamond tiles, which lined up back to back with the mall's funky atmospheric lighting, gives them a sort of dreamy striped design. Wait a minute, what does this sign say right here? No charging of cell phones. What the heck am I to do now? Shucks, my plans are foiled. Interestingly, this old Dillard's right here would have been one of the smallest stores ever constructed by the company, and it 100% still looks like an old Dillard's on the outside and even the inside. They even got the label scars of the shelves and cabinets forever burned into that carpet. A look that I always find sad, but in a sort of amusing way. Upon opening, the mall was only at 35% occupancy, a number that would steadily climb to 50 over the next year, but for its first few operating years, things around Arrowhead Mall were rather slow. In 1989, its next addition came in the form of a brand new Arrowhead Mall 6 theaters, which would open in the mall's food court. 5 years later, and the only real anchor name change in Arrowhead's life would occur as the smaller Beale Ladyman would be purchased by Stage Stores, with the store in Arrowhead subsequently being rebranded to Stage in 1994. What do you think that they were hiding inside of this old walled-off buckle store? I mean, it's gotta be some pretty confidential stuff to be requiring a frickin' facial retinal scan. As the 90s crept on, things would start to slow down around Arrowhead, and the mall would ever so slowly begin to lose hold of its status as Muskogee's retail magnet, as less and less shoppers would come to fill its halls daily, and more store closures were becoming prevalent around the mall. By the late 90s, US 62, just north of town, had become the city's primary retail focus, at least for big box retail, with new strip malls and even a Walmart as the first big box being built on site. By the early 2000s, more and more brands would vacate for the north side, and Arrowhead Mall was left in the dust of downtown. In 2005, Warmac would end up divesting their profile, selling the mall to Denver-based Jay Herzog, whom would only carpet over a few areas, take out the old children's play place, and add Wi-Fi, but not much else. That same year of 2005, the mall theaters would be expanded to 10 screens. It's okay, you don't have to worry about getting lost in the Arrowhead, because no matter where you're at in this mall, you're always gonna have one of those directories that's about 5 or 6 years out of date to refer you to the nearest closed store. But folks, let me take a moment and welcome you all to this amazing grand central courtyard of the mall, consisting of trees, abandoned storefronts, old kids' rides, and even the old theater, still sitting abandoned in time with neons plastered to its facade. The next pin in the mall's historical timeline comes in the form of a rather heinous act, when on April 10th, 2010, after a chili cook-off at the mall, a gang-related shooting would occur in the food court between rival Muskogean gang members of the Northsiders and Southsiders gangs. Yeah, I guess even small towns in the middle of Oklahoma have gang problems. 21-year-old Dondre Fowler, a thought-to-be Southsider, would run across rival gang members, and upon them calling him names like Soft Cider, he would open fire in the mall, instantly killing 17-year-old Jaron Reed and injuring 4 others. A mall employee who remained anonymous says they witnessed the scuffle, which had resulted in a group of about 10 to 15 people arguing before the shots. Dondre would quickly be apprehended by police, and the mall would remain closed for the rest of that weekend. After the shooting, Arrowhead Mall's reputation was sorely hurt, and it would take weeks and even months before most local shoppers would even step foot back in the mall. While things would eventually work themselves out, it was clear a gang-related murder in the mall was no good look for it. I thought this old Zale store was so neat, straight from 1987, with the pink marble tiles and the logo, which, while I was looking up at it, I was wondering to myself, can that still light up? Honestly, all of the former shops and sites in this entry wing were just so fascinating. From this old neon-covered Mexican grill on the right, which doesn't look like it's served an enchilada in decades, to the numbers on the drywall. The numbers, Mason! What do they mean? No, but for real, you guys, I'm gonna shut up here and let you enjoy the rest of this song, and just try to imagine what would have once been. The early 2010s were rather stagnant in the mall, with name brands all over silently packing up and leaving. In time, the major anchor store closures would too begin. 2014 was an interesting year because while the theaters were bought out by B&B Theaters in October, just across the mall that same month, Sears would announce their departure, shuttering their doors for the final time in November of 2014. Arrowhead was able to hold its own for a few years with name brands like GNC, GameStop, American Eagle, Claire's, and even Justice propping it up, though in time, even these stores would leave, either joining newer strip malls on the north side of town, or just abandoning the Muskogee market altogether. It was fine for a few years, and the fountain in the center court even still ran, but the thing about time is it unfortunately never slows, and like dominoes, the rest of the anchors would all bring them all down. The theaters were the next to go, as movie theater operations were being consolidated to the north side of town. Cinema 10's neon-lit marquees would show their last pictures on January 14th, 2018, where the theater has remained abandoned since. In 2019, a portion of the old Sears would be converted into a U.S. post office, while that same year, on the opposite end of the mall, Dillard's would announce the closure of their anchor, clearing out their small store by May. The pandemic would come and go, and Stage would be the next to throw in the towel, closing as a part of the Stage Store's bankruptcy in August of 2020. Now down to a JCPenney as its sole remaining anchor. Oh wait, nope, JCPenney, the final anchor in Arrowhead Mall, would too close their doors in bankruptcy in October of 2020, just months after Stage, leaving Arrowhead Mall washed up by the pandemic, completely dead. And most of the remaining recognizable name brands by this point would quickly vacate, giving us the very recognizable and depressing mall we see today. Instead of going out with a bang as our final song, we're gonna do what this mall did and go out with a whimper. Now, I'm not quite sure how this place is still open as of 2025, but if you are a big fan of dead malls and walking around and exploring these dreamy places, I'd say make this mall a bucket list destination, because this easily became a top 10 mall for me, and I really just can't see them keeping this place open any longer. I mean, this footage was from August of 2023. It was almost 2 years ago, so yeah, you can guess how the mall has aged since then. So why did Arrowhead Mall die? Well, as I take one last stroll through to check out some of my favorite sites one last time, we come to the modern day with our history lesson, where Arrowhead Mall remains open in 2025, still sitting like you see it in this video, almost like it's stuck in limbo. Like so many malls that we've covered in the past year, there's not just one reason why this place failed, but rather dozens of reasons, which were all sprinkled in throughout its lifetime. Everything from the mall's poor location in the middle of downtown, to the death of the older brands which all lived in it, the eventual moving of the retail scene in Muskogee to the north side, and even the shooting. When you take a step back and look at all of it, it's really just crazy that past and through the retail apocalypse, that this mall was still around in my visit in 2023. And the fact that it's still around in 2025 is just bizarre. Without any anchors, barely any stores to call it home, and not much of a retail presence aside from a seasonal spirit Halloween, if you want to see this mall and explore its dreamy atmosphere, I'd say get down here soon, because I really can't imagine them keeping the lights on in here any longer in its current state. Folks, if you stuck around this long, I want to thank you all so much for watching all the way through, and I hope you enjoyed Arrowhead Mall just as much as me. Like I said earlier, this easily became a top 10 mall for me, and I highly recommend checking it out for yourself. As I drive around the outside here, you'll see its rather striking exterior, coated in the finest of warm colors, and even a random guy who was blowing leaves but decided to shout at me as I was driving past him. But if you enjoyed tonight's video, consider liking and even subscribing, as it helps me out tons, and if you hit the little bell notification, then you never miss out on future episodes. And if you'd like to support me further, then I have a Patreon where you can get behind the scenes looks at videos and even future episodes. Really quick before we go on though, here's that guy yelling at me. I'm not quite sure what he wanted, but I guess I was kind of filming them work, so it does make a little bit of sense. But I obviously paid no attention to them. Next week we'll be live at a mall of your choosing, but 2 weeks from now we'll be back once again, this time to begin our final saga of Season 6, a Bando Lover's Dream of 3 of the creepiest and most haunting abandoned malls I've ever been to. Beginning with one which still rocks its 80s golden mirrored ceilings. Just be careful while looking up at them, or you might get falling glass shards in your eye. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. But until then, enjoy Arrowhead from this nice grassy hill, and you all have yourselves a lovely evening. Peace out, guys. See you later.